off too long. Thoughts on the new Factorio expansion. Having the space guy working on it is terrifying. Everything I've seen looks great, except for item quality levels, which I'm not 100% sold on. I get how you can effectively get a reliable flow of them with production like you could with Uranium in the game already, but imagining having to have a kind of item refinery set up for every single item in the game seems like it would drive me nuts. You don't have to, but I don't know.
So how do we get inside the ship if it's in the air? The core is usually a rifle, not wings.
There's a gravity lift that ferries troops and supplies between
monkeys for the incinerator.
and the surface. That's our ticket in.
Once we get inside the ship, I should be able to lock on to the tracking signal from Captain Key's neural implants.
The enemy has captured Captain Keyes and are holding him aboard one of their cruisers, the Truth and Reconciliation. The ship is currently holding position approximately 300 meters above the other end of this plateau.
So how do we get inside the ship if it's in the air? The core is usually a rifle, not wings.
There's a gravity lift that ferries troops and supplies between the ship and the surface.
Now ask you to
That's our
solve
ticket
puzzles
in.
while you
Once we get inside the
simultaneously
ship,
engage
I
in
should be able to
combat,
lock
so
on
you're
to
not
the
getting let
tracking
off
signal
any
from
easier.
Captain Key's neural
Early
implants.
encounters feel tense, claustrophobic.
Hit 'em, Marines!
As you
Go,
flee
go,
the city,
go!
the
The
sense
core
of
ain't paying us
chaos
by the
gets
hour.
ratcheted slowly
Stick to the higher ground
upwards.
to the right.
Some later
Should be able
sequences,
to
like the
recon the
pitched battle in the
Covenant position
hospital
without being
between
spotted.
overwhelmed Combine
I've
soldiers and the
detected Covenant
endless horde of
stationary
head
guns
grab
in the
zombies,
next pass.
have a sense of
I recommend
really
using
savage
sniper
chaos
rifle
to
to
them
take
that
out the
tops
Covenant
even
while I
the
call
core
for Marine
game.
support.
Finally, after arriving at the
Get ready
train
to move
station,
into support,
evacuating
Sergeant.
the
The
refugees,
Master Chief
including
is going
Barney
to
Calhoun,
covertly take out
they'll
as
face
many of the
Episode
Covenant
1
as he can.
cinematic
Don't
interpretation
open
of
fire
boss
until you hear
battle
the
against a
enemy return
single
fire on
striker.
us.
That
This
doesn't
should let us
sound
steal some
more
pride.
exciting. You've faced strikers before, but
Alert.
the battle
The
relies on
Covenant is
an
making a
ever-shifting
run for
use
that
of the train
stationary
yard
gun.
itself
Take him out.
and the scarcity of choices to keep the attention, which works just like they intended. You get the triumphant experience of a more obvious boss battle without the thorny. Episode 1's climax is both natural and hard. You and Alex board the last train out of City 17, just as the Citadel begins to collapse. The advisors, the true power overseeing the flee like rats from the ship, and it becomes clear as the blast's otherworldly shockwave advances toward your speeding train that you are in for another goddamn cliffhanger. It took from late 2004 to mid-2006 for Episode 1. Episode 2 would not be released until late 2007. When it was finally released, however, Episode 2 blew Episode 1 out of the water, drawing on pacing and design elements pioneered during the Ravenholm and Highway 17 chapters of the core game, and then elaborating on those elements heavily, introducing new areas and new gameplay concerns that fit in perfectly with the series' aesthetics and style of presentation. It also features an even further upgraded version of the source engine, now capable of rendering structural collapse and multifaceted realistic. That is a useful thing for Episode 2, which revolves around a wild, wonderful sojourn from the outskirts of what used to be City 17, the White Forest Missile Facility, where Dr. Vance, Dr. Kleiner, and the rest of the cast that have been absent in Episode 1 have been holed up. Where Episode 1 didn't have much more ambition than to offer a perfect version of the Half-Life 2 core experience, Episode 2 is decidedly committed to making that experience richer and grander. It does this, in typical Half-Life fashion, from several directions at once. First is that Episode 2 tries very hard to make the player's emotions adjusted to the series like by playing up Alice's vulnerability and mortality in a way that has not been strongly emphasized in the series so far, and also by expanding the cast of secondary characters. The introduction of Dr. Magnuson, who fills the jackass vacancy left by Dr. Magnuson acts as a kind of foil for kindness and warmth to the other scientists. He is an intolerable windbag who hinders your progress repeatedly and has no patience for everyone constantly patting Gordon on the back. It's a little awkward to have an important character suddenly appear out of nowhere like he does, but his presence in the ensemble rounds it out perfectly. His pomposity has a lot of comedic value all on its own, but more importantly, his unfriendliness makes the rest of the cast seem much more alive and real, with a contrasting personality around it. Regarding Alex herself, after spending a short period of the expansion traveling together, she's mortally wounded by a new type of combine threat. Vortigaunt step in to save her, but you got to venture through a system of mines infested by antlions to harvest the royal jelly from another dimension to facilitate her future. It's kind of ridiculous, and mines and this subplot comprise one of the weakest sequences in the entire Half-Life catalog, in my opinion. There's not much enjoyable about it besides some new enemies and a couple of clever puzzles. For the most part, the first hour or two of Episode 2 This way of connecting into the game world, I'm not moved by it at all. It has a regressive quality to the design that seems like it's moving back to corridor shooting from the old spaces it was painted. It feels like episode 2 really begins with trying to step outside the mines with a restored Alex. I wasn't much persuaded by its attempts to connect me with Alex this way either, because while the scene of her wounding is shocking and well handled, the whole Sleeping Beauty bug hunt that the game's about to throw at you is cliche enough to ennui the tension built by it. Episode 2, After the Mines, has some of the best gameplay and century storytelling that Half-Life as a franchise has to offer. The mines themselves are interminable slogs through puzzle and encounter design that feels lesser than what came before. Even if Episode 1 was not as impressive visually and had less complexity in the map design, it did do a better job of connecting the player to Alex. One misfiring chapter is hardly enough to drag down the totality of the Episode 2 experience, though. Soon enough, the expansion shifts into a broader range of modes and moves. Your first step, after a surprise confrontation with enormous antlions, is to make your way down through a headcrab-infested outpost with survival horror mechanics, across a toxic river, and up a broken highway overpass to retrieve the car you'll need for Episode 2's lengthy, amazing vehicle sequence. And it's no Doom like while it still has the torn-apart and re-engineered look that is so characteristic of Half-Life, this time you are very recognizably going to be driving a '69 Dodge Charger, and it's surprising what a difference having a real-world object like a Dodge in Half-Life's fantastic universe makes. Saving the world is just more fun with Mopar, no two ways about it. The driving sequence with the Charger is not nearly as complicated as Highway 17, nor does it have as many varieties of gameplay, but the environmental design is much stronger, the route better integrated into the landscape and scene. The several checkpoints and ambushes you'll have to work through are well-paced and cleverly crafted as they escalate and challenge. You'll also come face-to-face with one of the game's true villains, an advisor, hiding in a barn of all things now that the city is destroyed. If you couldn't get a solid glimpse of one inside an alien skyscraper, what are the chances you'll run into one just traveling along a byway? Quite low. And that's what's so effective about the scene. It's weird and brutal, right at the moment when the game was seeming more grounded and less dangerous than usual. When you reach the White Forest facility, you deliver the data and get a long reunion with all of the old players, as well as Dr. Robinson. Then it's up to you to defend the silo while a satellite is ready for launch. You're introduced to a brand new game device, explosives that you toss with a gravity gun and stick to striders, which you'll need, because you're about to experience the largest, most feverish battle in the whole of Half-Life. Episode 2's action rolls to a close with an incredible climactic defense sequence against waves of striders and counter-escorts, up to 3 at once, who slowly work their way from many different directions towards the silo, destroying buildings in this one, and moving an access point to explosive supply with every building they destroy. It is a whole new mode of play for the series. You're talking very quickly, then the sequence cranks up the difficulty steadily. For a very long, large-scale action sequence, the pacing is ridiculous, and the payoff is strongly satisfying. It is a great climax, but it's only a climax of gameplay, not the game. Episode 2 continues with it to allow you to personally run out the satellite and destroy the newly forming Combine portal, far above what remains of the city, an echo of the satellite launched from On a Rail in Half-Life 1. Then you, Alex, and Dr. Vance head off to the helicopter that will shuttle you to Episode 3. The player's comfort level, generally, is at an all-time high at this point, so it is the perfect moment to slip in the death of a major character for maximum emotional impact, and Valve's reading in an ambush from the two advisors who incapacitated the 3 of you and rather brutally murdered Dr. Vance. The dog, Alex saves the 2 of you, but it's too late for Dr. Vance. And that's the end of the episode. Alex tearfully mourning her dead father. What's worse news is that as far as the Half-Life franchise goes, that was the last thing we ever saw of the official story for over 12 years. I don't think they would have chosen an ending like that if they didn't think that they'd have the opportunity to continue the story relatively promptly, but Valve ultimately decided to prioritize business over storytelling, shit-canning the narrative right as it reached its most vivid cliffhanger yet for more than a decade while they figured out what to do with the franchise. It wasn't Episode 3. And all these years later, it's not even Half-Life 3 quite yet. Valve's willingness to play the long con and sit on such a powder keg of community sentiment is, in some ways, shrewd. I had to wait 13 years for this scene to resolve, and when it did, it was through an entirely new medium of interaction that I had left off on. blowing my mind open as strongly as Half-Life 1 blew my mind when I played it the first time in my childhood. Chances are high that if you bought Episode 2 retail, you bought it as part of the Orange Box, and if you did, then at least you got some consolation prizes. To really get the expansion selling, it was packaged with Team Fortress 2, TFC's Source Engine update, and a short first-person puzzle game, also using the Source Engine called Portal. Episode 2 was supposed to be the big deal in the Orange Box. Portal was supposed to be something you played afterwards when you were frustrated that there wasn't an Episode 3. But Portal ended up being the best of the bunch, a true underdog success for a game that is built on the strange premise as Portal is. You see, in Portal, you're not a scientist. You're an experiment. You're asked to solve puzzles revolving around navigating the environment and getting through portal doors. Doorways whose entrances and exits you can place and then pass through at will. It's a very complicated mechanic in practice, but Portal teaches itself to the player at a leisurely and fun pace. The early experiments, or test chambers as Portal would have it, are built around relatively easy puzzles that can be solved by figuring out one of the principal mechanics of how to use the Portal system. When the test chambers start getting really crazy, starting at about chamber 11, you have to apply what you've been taught in a disciplined way. You incorporate platform just like in the classic Half-Life games. It is very surprising how old-school Portal's design is. Its focus on platforming, particularly the industrial platforming in the last third of the game, connects it very strongly with the original Half-Life. The puzzles themselves are flatly genius, at first with obvious solutions that are instructive in a subtle way, and then with increasingly hard-to-parse and intimidating solutions. There's no real guide to understanding the mechanics of the Portal system, but the game is structured to teach you, piece by piece, until you've got to apply your lessons in increasingly complex and perilously interactive ways. The way the game challenges the player to use their brain in a spatially creative manner feels amazing, and its cleverness in instructing the player at how to do it is what is the most spectacular thing. But these are not the reasons why Portal is the best game in the Orange Box. Portal is the best game because of its presentation. Portal is an ingenious dark comedy told in the margins of the puzzles, relayed through messages from the computer overseeing your tests. It offers helpful information and inane observations at first, in a cheerful but clinical tone, seeming, at first, to be just some pre-recorded digital proctor. But as the puzzles get more complicated, the messages become more sinister. It isn't entirely clear that you had a choice to participate in the tests. Then the tests become deadly, and the same cheerful tone of the messages you've been receiving persists. At first, actively lying about the deadliness of the environment, then later, gleefully impressing on the player how many ways there are to die. As the game continues, you get a glimpse into the industrial crawl spaces behind the test walls, some of them showing signs of long-term occupation, which is hugely unsettling against the extremely sterile look of the test chambers. In Portal's early production, the environments were as really minimalist as they are in the final version, but early game testers kept trying to use decorative objects to solve puzzles, so the designers shaved out all the excess. The result only heightens the uncomfortable strangeness of the experience with its starkness. In the final test chamber, your reward is a fiery death. You're given just seconds to figure out an escape, and nothing tells you to escape, just more instincts as a human, and as player one, not to be thrown into open fire. This opens up Portal's last hour of play, taking place in the spaces between test chambers, in the industrial spaces, and small offices, desolate corridors that look to have been abandoned. And it turns out that the messages you've been receiving aren't recordings. The whole facility is being administrated by an artificial intelligence, GLaDOS, and she is less than thrilled with not being dead. She assaults, harasses, and belittles the player continuously throughout your escape, and your escape attempt is a mixed success. You end up right inside GLaDOS' central chamber, where you beat the computer with a weaponless boss fight, forcing you to juggle many of the puzzle mechanics that the game's taught you in an unconventional arena while missiles are being shot. It's wonderful. It's a boss fight, classically, totally, but it's constructed like the puzzles you've spent Portal's entire duration learning. Like the rest of Portal, this last sequence is a fantastically original take on some old-school game design. Then, escape! Or not. Originally, it was left open-ended whether your escape was a true success, but when Portal 2 was in development, a patch retconned Portal's ending to have the player hauled back down inside the labs for certain. At a short 3 to 4 hours in length, with a minimalist approach to visual design and a new perspective on old Half-Life tropes, Portal plays more like an incredibly professional mod than a standalone project. Yet, it would go on to spawn a full sequel well after Dead. Team Fortress 2 is the last product in the Orange Box, and one of the few original multiplayer source titles with a large remaining player base. In the beginning, it was a cartoonish, high-definition version of Team Fortress Classic. All the maps and all the classes were essentially unchanged from the Gold Source era, but the art style was made much more highly stylized. A clean, cartoonish, brightly colored aesthetic of visual design came to characterize the game, instead of the muddied colors that TFC leaned towards because of its Quake lineage. Gameplay was always wild and exuberant, so the new art style suited well. As time went on, Team Fortress 2 went through many adding weapons and decorative clothing and armor you had to unlock through chance or by certain conditions. Over time, Team Fortress 2 would become less and less accessible to casual and new players because of these layers of rewards for players who have invested huge quantities of time playing it. For those players, it's wonderful. They get gameplay that rewards their dedication, and players who will self-select for a high level of skill. But it's pretty brutal to the inexperienced or the insober, seemingly more concerned with grinding for funny hats than pitting players against each other. While other games of this era waxed and waned within their own franchises, the true inheritor to Team Fortress 2 was Overwatch, taking visual design and total views, and then wrapping them all up with Team Fortress 2 is hat obsession and dwindling magic. Today feels constantly clear that casual and straightforward the highly corporate characters. As dissimilar as Team Fortress 2 became Team Fortress Classic, the Source versions of Counter-Strike and Day of Defeat stayed relatively true to their roots. Counter-Strike Source would stay so wildly popular that its second retail release, Global Offensive, in late 2012, also used the Source engine. Counter-Strike rewards long-term players even more than Team Fortress 2 does, and in a less gimmicky way. Players who are really good at Counter-Strike are so good that players with less skill are just completely fucked. Over time, a process of attrition has eliminated the middle ground of average players. The round of CS lasts about 90 seconds, and if you die 25 seconds in, you'll have to wait until the round is over. If you die 5 times in a row like that without getting a kill, you spend most of your time waiting around to die again. It's alienating, and so CS matches are only players who gain the experienced. The others are those who just haven't yet lost patience. Day of Defeat Source was and still is friendlier to average players than both Team Fortress and Counter-Strike, but it was never nearly as popular. The Source version of Day of Defeat looks wonderful and is a hell of a lot of fun to play, but there's nothing new about it. It's just a prettier version of the original mod, and no attempt was ever made to keep it relevant, like with major updates or new retail versions. Returning to it, the map design is what still stands out most. Even after having left the game to collect dust for years, I found myself remembering all the little tertiary routes and secret planets built into the more obvious battle flow between the control points. It is my favorite of all the multiplayer titles that Half-Life 1 and 2 spawned, but the player base is almost unusably small nowadays, destined to keep shrinking down to nobody. The Source generation of Half-Life development yielded one more multiplayer concept, one that would make up for the vacancy of zombie content left by making the Source sequel. The new game, Left 4 Dead, would center around a cooperative struggle for survival as 4 players take a long, continuous journey in classic Half-Life style through a chapter and fend off literally hundreds of computer-controlled zombies. It's the player versus computer battle the broader franchise always needed. Half-Life had a mod that allowed cooperative play, Sven Co-op, and there's always decay, I guess, but nothing on par with the fine and absurdly fast-paced experience of Left 4 Dead. Each of the 4 player characters has a distinct personality, and the game is very clever with how it encourages cooperation and trust-based play. Wonderful change of pace from the competitive challenges of other Source multiplayer titles. Left 4 Dead does have conventional and was front and center from the beginning. Environmental design and map layout are such standouts that even though the game received a retail sequel, Left 4 Dead 1's original maps were ported over to the newer version. The game still looks great and plays great even without the sequel's enhancements, but most fans have long moved on to the second because of its greater weapon and enemy variety, even across the legacy maps. Even if there was never a Source version of Day Hunger, Half-Life 2 has had its share of amazing single-player mods as well, one of which was so good that Valve hired the man behind it to work on Half-Life in an official capacity. That mod was Minerva Metastasis, and while it mostly only uses game resources and art from the core Half-Life experience, it is very easy to see why Adam Foster, Minerva's creator, got a job offer out of it. Foster's contention as a game designer is that Half-Life 2's level design was too driven by gameplay concerns, further contending that making the player conform to the map architecture's demands provides a more meaningful and memorable experience than making the map architecture conform to the player's demands. The result is an experience that does feel, overall, more realistic and denser than Half-Life 2, and that is a feat. Minerva was made to complement the main Half-Life experience in plot, design, and pacing, and it is a testament to Foster's creativity and vision that he does so with such obvious skill. This one-man show presents a side of Half-Life that is a little darker and a little more challenging than you might have seen before, done with every bit as much competency as an official release. It's on the short side at around 2 hours, but it is so tightly packed and so satisfying to play, it feels like a much bigger experience, and figures in memory that way. Half-Life maps have always had a certain amount of while Minerva has almost none. Nearly every inch, every atom is utilized for something. There's much more backtracking in puzzles than Valve's design would usually incorporate, in service to Foster's insistence on architectural cohesion over convenience. The facility that you traverse in the mod is every bit as large as the Citadel and 5 times as complicated, using the underground inversion to create an escalating sense of hopelessness. Minerva is a great way to experience the fight against the Combine. Plus, it is still possible that having Minerva might be insight into some of the design values we might see represented in the franchise's ongoing future. More clues come from examining Portal 2, the big-budget sequel to that minimalist comedy puzzler from the Orange Box. Portal 2 was, for years, the last AAA single-player game that Valve released, a vague kind of ellipsis on the whole Half-Life franchise and the Source era at large. Portal 2 is an amazing game, the best of the full lot we've covered in this game, and it is always a bittersweet playthrough because of its position as harbinger of the end for Valve yesterday. Before, they were known more as a sales platform, no more for Steam, and they were regarded as a Half-Life 2 Episode 2 hinged its transition into the Episode 3 that never happened on a crossover connection with Portal, with the data that Alex and Gordon steal from the Citadel having been found to contain a clue to follow turncoat physicist Judith Mossman to the relic of the Borealis, a Philadelphia experiment-type ship that disappeared from Aperture Labs many years ago. In Portal 2, you can even find a little flotation device from the ship. And more, there's a suggestion, very slight but definitely there, that there is some kind of connection between GLaDOS and the Combine's feminine voiced AI, who you hear all throughout Half-Life. Portal 2 is ultimately insular within its sub-franchise, and does not tie itself to Half-Life in any meaningful way besides the slight teasers. What you can see instead, or what's valuable in including it with the broader arc of Half-Life titles, is Valve growing their repertoire of skills and tricks as a development house. Portal 2 marries the warm and friendly approach to supporting characters that Valve had been pursuing since Half-Life 2, with even more clever and complex puzzle design than Portal 1, melding them together across a backdrop of environments more grand and more alien than anything yet portrayed in a Half-Life game, rivaling the Citadel, rivaling Zen in fantastical scale. Where Black Mesa, the relied on a sense of naturalism to come across the way, as a secret lab of government funding and serious mandate, Aperture Science Laboratories works on a cartoon logic only slightly more presentable than what you might see on Pinky and the Brain. Sometimes exactly on that wavelength, like when you fall down an infinite pit, or the villain is turned into a potato, or you see a sign that says, "In case of implosion, stare directly at it." It's easy to congratulate Portal 2 for continuing to iterate on the puzzle mechanics and expanding them with such winning variety. But on replaying the game, that's not what I loved the most, but I truly looked forward to. What I found myself most excited for was to be told the Aperture Science story unfold in time with the puzzles, and one of the most deftly fascinating uses of environmental storytelling that I've ever seen. If you play Portal 1 and Portal 2 back-to-back, the sequel gets off to a very slow start by having you essentially run through the whole first game again, real quick, before launching into the mechanics. The sameness of the puzzle chambers is disguised behind a thick layer of decay and a bunch of jokes. GLaDOS is gone, has been for anywhere between centuries to millennia, and an emergency mode automated proctor has taken her place. His whole new vibe is great, but what I think is most interesting about this replication of puzzles is that the developers seem to feel like, in terms of teaching a new player the ropes, that the first game's progression of concepts and teaching reinforcement could not be improved on. I agree. Portal 2 is designed to be a completely standalone experience if it needs to be, no matter how many threads trace back to earlier or potentially later titles. Part of establishing this identity is pulling a move similar to what Half-Life 2 did over Half-Life 1, to refocus on strong relationships with highly expressive primary characters over a lonelier journey. To correct for the everyone's your friend vibe of the base Half-Life 2 campaign, Half-Life 2 added Dr. Magnuson, a catty and critical voice who provided a lot of value to the ensemble. Portal 2 pivots on the concept to arrive at everyone's your frenemy instead. Each voice you hear dangerous and callous in many ways, but extremely personally warm in others. Sometimes this shifts along the character arc. Sometimes, like with GLaDOS, it's a constant churn of familiarity and contempt. These relationships are literally reflected in the environments. The emergency proctor at the beginning was just a warm-up. When GLaDOS comes back online and the gang's back together, she repairs the facility before your very eyes, each test you complete, and the complexity introduced by the next one going hand in hand with a return to gleaming metal and bright diodes. When the roles are reversed, and Wheatley, an AI designed specifically to generate bad ideas, is in control of the facility, his tests are correspondingly nonsensical and simple. The challenge in navigating Wheatley's tests is the way he's broken the chambers. You don't arrive at the ideal solution, you arrive at any solution you can. It's a synthesis of present tense purpose, ambient storytelling, and detailed character development. All done while preserving a mean sense of comedic timing and intent. The best illustration of this by far are the sealed legacy chambers, way down in the forgotten parts of the facility that even GLaDOS has no awareness of. After your cartoon fall down the bottomless pit, you arrive in the oldest parts of the labs, just a broken tangle of nothing at first that eventually resolves into a grand foyer, unlike anything in the labs above. Something designed not for pure science, but for strong impressions, designed for salesmanship. In this way, we introduce the character of Cave Johnson, founder and CEO of Aperture Science, before we ever hear his voice or learn his name. You soon find a cabinet filled with curios and trophies from his life, showing that Cave was a shower curtain salesman who ended up accidentally financing the world's first successful interdimensional portal device. Black Mesa would bother with the theoretical frontiers of the technology. Cave Johnson would use it to build an empire of mad science for the express purpose of making a quick buck. In the 1940s and 50s, when these first chambers were first built, this grand entrance hall was used to welcome astronauts, athletes, the elite crusts of society.
We should head back to the shuttle bay and call for Eva.
It was the heyday of that kind of goofy, anything-goes science, in pop culture as much as in the fiction of Portal 2. As you climb the chambers, time goes on. Anything-goes science killed a lot of people, a lot of folks got cancer, there were quite a few lawsuits. So we arrive at a 1970s-styled welcome facility. Cheaper, more corporate, where the homeless and destitute and foolish could sign up to test in the test chambers and be compensated a whole $60, like in a poster of a man waving the check in front of a big yacht with a $60 price tag. Cave Johnson's Proctor narration changes from congratulatory to disdainful, bitter, irritated by the class of people running through his once grand experiments and the shambles of his former reputation. Then the climb goes higher, time moves on, and now we're in the mid to late 80s. Cave Johnson has cancer from his own experiments. He's trying everything, lashing out, pulling people down with him. It is now a mandate at Aperture Science that all employees must test or be fired. No one on the outside world should be involved. Fuck him. All Cave Johnson needs is computers, and if he has his way, he'll be put inside a computer to live for eternity. If he dies before that happens, put his always loyal secretary in the machine, no matter if she says no. So, now we know the story of GLaDOS, that she used to be Carolyn, that she loved and admired Johnson, that both her mania for testing and her resentment against humanity are echoes of her old crusades, of staying by her boss's side as everyone else abandoned him, and then, in the end, being betrayed by him. Makes a machine feel a little vengeful, perhaps, if the temptation of copious supplies of deadly neurotoxin are just sitting around all the time. Going through this with GLaDOS shifts her perspective enough that she lets Chell, the player character, leave at the end, ejected into a field of blowing grass so different from the game world you can almost feel the sun and hear the wind. Of course, there's the matter of civilization being completely gone. Portal 2 takes place long after the dust has settled on the events of Half-Life. We've moved past the interdimensional war to an interval of quiet wheat. There's a whole other campaign in Portal 2, longer actually than even the main single-player one, but it's exclusive to the co-op mode. Decay and Left 4 Dead both filled their role as co-op for Half-Life for their respective generations, plus mods like Sven co-op, but those are all combat-focused. The Portal 2 co-op campaign is cool because it eschews the storytelling of the primary campaign to refocus on making much trickier and more obtuse puzzles. With a new pair of portals for Player 2 to add into the mix, puzzle mechanics from the main campaign can be twisted into way more complex configurations. It's meant for people who have finished the base game and understand all of those ideas. It's an expert-level bonus mode. You can play online with strangers, but I ignored the co-op campaign for years because that never appealed to me much. I almost forgot that it existed until I roped a friend into helping me gather footage for Decay, and we moved on to the Portal 2 co-op campaign when we got frustrated with keeping Decay's dedicated server going. It is some of the most fun that I've ever had with co-op, simply because of the Portal format. Solve puzzle, receive joke. That's the bargain, and it's worth it every time. The co-op campaign is basically an epilogue on the main story, where GLaDOS tries to find happiness in testing without a human subject. She sarcastically pits the bots against each other as you go on, moving beyond the base insults from before to a hilariously manipulative dynamic where she overpraises one player and savagely burns another. It flip-flops all the time, who's getting the compliment and who's getting the insult, but the insult is always the greater honor. The only downside is that it shows how creatively limited the Portal narrative is going forward. It was always less about lore than it was about Chell and GLaDOS. With Chell gone, the puzzles are all that's left. Portal spin-offs would continue to be released, like GLaDOS appearing in Poker Night 2 or the little Bridge Builder mobile game, but the insularity of Portal 2 kept it safely out of orbit from the bubbling resentment over there not being a Half-Life 3, and increasingly in its own little category of AAA comedy puzzler. 2020 wasn't a good year for much of anybody, but it was an incredible year for Half-Life. The year where the dam broke and the franchise got hours of new content on both the front and back ends of the story arc. Before talking about Half-Life Alyx, all its retcons, what it means for the future of the franchise, it's important to acknowledge the amazing work done by Crowbar Collective on reviving the franchise's past. Their remake of the original game, retitled Black Mesa, has been around so long that I briefly touched on it in a version of this video I did in 7 years. It wasn't until 2020 that it was officially considered finished with a version of the then series, completely worn down from scratch. Basically, an entirely new back half of the game.
No!
The work, as played start to finish, is one of the most loving acts of artistic tribute that I've ever seen in the medium. Each corridor, puzzle, and encounter has been reproduced in a way that not only recreates it, but enhances it, coloring in the details that my imagination had always colored in for me when I thought back on the first. What makes it so amazing isn't that it's a one-to-one recreation. It's that what Black Mesa ends up being is a version of the experience, where those instances that I remembered something being grander or smoother or more scenic than it actually was on replaying the classic version, Black Mesa pulls the original apart and crafts an aftermarket replacement that makes the same kind of nostalgic corrections that my brain wanted to make in misremembering. There's a number of instances where an area is made much larger than it was before, so on account of that, many more enemies are added just to utilize the arena-like quality the added space gives. Or instances where a few extra rooms are added just to give extra texture to the environment, to fill the space and preserve the sense of visual naturalism the original had by adding more detail to the more detailed game engine. The game feels different to control than the original, the movement feels a little faster, the combat definitely moves at a faster and more frenetic pace. There are some modernizations that are in there in service of the expanded scale of the map and the expanded scope of combat encounters. It's a critical part of their personal nostalgia, but I came to respect Black Mesa more because of these differences, because of the confidence needed to say, the game needs these changes to feel right, and to be right about that. These changes are significant enough to say pretty categorically that this is a different game. And takes 6 to 10 hours to fully have the experience. It is meaningfully different on the front end of the game, too. It feels more modern, more connected to the Half-Life 2 generation.
Everybody, mount up. Let's get on board.
I think this is a healthy difference, but it does affect how each player will place it within the canon. If you're interested in Half-Life as a historical object, and
Give
the
me a
arc
minute
of
to
design
interface
changes
with the
evolving
ship's
through the
controls.
years, by all
no
means
need.
begin
I'll
with the
take
original
control of
game.
that
It holds up
myself.
perfectly well without anyone's help at all.
Captain, Hunter!
If you're interested in Half-Life as the first chapter in the wide, interconnected
Hang
story,
on.
I want to recommend starting with Black Mesa instead. Alongside the environmental tweaks is a push to bring the experience more in line with some of the retcons that Half-Life 2 made, like Who's Who in the Sector C test labs on the day of the experiment. Eli Vance, after all, had to explain which dude he was when he reintroduced, and Dr. Kleiner was interchangeably several scientists with the same voice and face in the original release. Black Mesa clears it up by using slightly younger-looking versions of exactly as they appear in Half-Life 2, although, I'm sorry to say that the voice acting for Eli Vance is the worst part of the whole remake. It's just an oddly self-conscious imitation, like the scientist who
Covenant
overruns
believe
size
that what they
of
call
test
the silent
machine,
cartographer
but in a way where it's
somewhere
much too
under this island.
enthusiastic and
The
fawning
cartographer is a
compared to
map
Lions
room and will
navigating.
lead us to Halo's
Beyond
control
that,
center.
the voice acting is excellent.
The island has multiple structures and installations.
The science team
One
and
of them
security staff
contains the
have
map room.
many new voices and many new faces, with new conversations to overhear all throughout the second scene before it all goes wrong, and even later on during the quiet moments. They've even included the episode of the retcon where it's Dr. Madison's password setting up in advance before you don't get to it because it's always a game. The only real inconsistency in this is that Black Mesa does special effects so much more impressively than Half-Life 2, and a version of the source engine that's a decade more advanced, so that when you do follow the game's narrative sequence, there's such a noticeable when you move on to the sequel. Half-Life 2, then, becomes the most antiquated part of the experience in this playthrough, which is slightly jarring for someone who remembers how incredible it was. I didn't appreciate back in 2013, but a remarkable treatment of Black Mesa. Of course, back in 2013, it wasn't even finished. The massively expanded Zen sequence is an offshoot of the core design principles that Black Mesa is fixated on. The drive to modernize and smooth out the parts that aren't actually that much fun about the original, and the drive to bring the first chapter of the story into narrative cohesion with the second's and its episodes. The first of these narrative retcons comes the first time that you see a Vortigaunt during the Resonance Cascade. It's explained that the Nihilith, the boss of the game, held the Vortigaunts in slavery. When he was defeated, they were free, and no longer an enemy of humanity, but an ally against the Combine, who were the ones who made the Nihilith so monstrous in the first place. Here, the green armor they wore in the original textures is clearly portrayed as
Okay,
shackles,
let's move out.
marking them as
Let's
thralls.
go find the map room that
When
will
you
show
reach
us the
Zen, the
location
majority of the
Halo's
new
control
levels are
center.
oriented around expanding your understanding of that dynamic. Vortigaunts and Zen are never hostile to you by choice. The big alien controllers, with the round heads and the amber lightning balls, have their attack repertoire expanded to include telekinesis to throw things at them, and also telepathic domination to force 2 Vortigaunts per controller to fight for them against you. Kill the controller quickly, though, and you don't have to kill
In a
any
cliff wall.
Vortigaunts at all.
I'll bet the
This
silent
dynamic has an
cartographer
amazing
is somewhere
set-piece
inside
battle
that
just to
room.
illustrate. About a third of the way through, you reach a Vortigaunt village in what seems to be their native architecture. You can choose to be a different kind of interdimensional
looks like
traveler
there is
than
a
you were
path
before,
into the
something
interior
better
of
than
the
a crowbar
island.
sprinting at them through darkness. You reach the top level of the village, and then the controllers show up en masse to oppose you. Will you choose the easy fight and kill everything opposing you, or choose the harder fight and honor the Vortigaunt's peaceful intentions? You'll be forgiven by the Vortigaunts come Half-Life 2 anyway. It assumes the fight because that's the original one. But knowing what you know about them and having an option to demonstrate that narrative symmetry and gameplay choices is amazing. Plus, the environmental design is still just as grounded in jumping puzzles as it ever was. More so, even, because the levels are able to utilize so much more space. I had thought that the effort to modernize the game would basically cut out all the antiquated platforms, but I was dead wrong. What it did instead was unify it with a portal-like flourish with the ability to long jump and all the jump pads everywhere. Create spatial puzzles with clearly defined rules, a limited set of verbs to navigate a set of obstacles paired to those verbs exclusively. Besides being kind of overwhelmed by just how long the new levels are and how much they cram into them, I got the sense that I was playing through a game that had become equally a puzzler as it is a shooter. Even the puzzles begin to tie into the lore. In the original, an impressive-looking portal took you to the Gonarch's lair for a boss fight. Here, that same portal is turned into a complicated, multi-part puzzle where you have to turn on a portal device that's a direct echo of the one at the top of the Citadel in Half-Life 2, or more critically in Episode 1, where you use the 3 beams to stabilize the reactive core. It's difficult to really convey how much the original run of levels have been adapted into sprawling new versions. Gornark's Lair was just a short detour in Half-Life 1. In Black Mesa, it's a whole hour or more of fleeing from the thing, with staggered arena fights where you're given a chance to damage it. It's both the thing you remember, and 45 minutes of new, thematically appropriate gameplay iterated on top of it. And that is just one chapter of 4 for Zen. The others are all much longer. The only one I really didn't care for, honestly, was Interloper. The factory sequence was always my least favorite in the original Zen, and the new version, it just goes on and on and on and on and on and on. Maybe the path through the levels is cleaned up a great deal, a lot of work was done to make it that way, but the oppressive, seemingly endless length of the facility and the chapter's obsession with platforming made it kind of miserable for me. It felt, in that way, exactly like the original, frustrating in the same way, but bigger and more and in HD. The rest of Zen is just so incredible with how it presents its aesthetics and weaves in the lore. It caught me off guard to be trapped in a mire of retrograde platforming. Black Mesa returns to form with how it changed the boss fight with Annihilant, though. It takes a firm no-teleporting stance and sticks to it. Instead, they've given him much more dangerous area of effect attacks that increase in spectacle and severity as he takes damage. You're killing an ancient, nigh-omnipotent psychic being from a different dimension, after all. As he dies, crazy energies spill out from his ruptured body. It eliminates all the annoying elements of the fight and replaces them with a more straightforward, enjoyable, lore-driven experience. When in Half-Life 2 the Combine promised Dr. Breen he'll be rehomed in a new body, this is the kind of creature, generally, that they were threatening to turn him into, twisted and sewn together in a cybernetic agony. Having this fight, and the broader Zen experience, reconfigured to foreshadow the Combine, helps immeasurably with series continuity. It is the #1 reason why I think Black Mesa should be played in preference to classic Half-Life 1 as part of a narrative sequence. The transition from Half-Life 1 to 2 was never smooth, yet this new Zen does the impossible and bridges them in a way that's both coherent and natural. It even retools the climactic sequence with the G-Man to be presentationally consistent with the sequel, fading his face in and out and freezing time and the signature flourishes that would come to characterize his rare but critical appearances in the following titles. This is what makes Black Mesa such a remarkable act of devotion. It has a fan's nose for connecting the dots, merged with the confidence of design choices that made Half-Life 1 so singular on its release. It has an enthusiasm, an energy that remakes sometimes lack, like the Call of Duty Modern Warfare remasters, and how the changes they make shrink the game from what it used to be instead of growing it. It's best to begin at the beginning with a thing as big as Half-Life. I'm grateful to Crowbar Collective for spending so many years crafting a new beginning as fine as this one. Steam's success is an online marketplace, an iTunes for games, as the old folks might say, allowed Valve to decouple with its reputation as a development house. It no longer made any business sense to release short episodic content on an aging engine, especially not so many long years after. Gabe Newell, Valve's big man on campus, has generally been as tight-lipped about Half-Life 3 as the rest of Valve, but some years back, when I originally did this video, he gave a complex answer to a willfully stupid question. Someone asked him when Ricochet 2 was coming out. Ricochet was another Half-Life 1 mod acquired by Valve, but it was a total flop. There is no way there would ever be a Ricochet 2. Newell answered the question like this, quote, "In terms of Ricochet 2, we always have this problem that when we talk about things too far in advance, we end up changing our minds as we're going through developing stuff. So as we're thinking through the giant story arc, which is Ricochet 2, you might get to a point where you're saying something that's surprising us in a positive way and something that's surprising us in a negative way. And we'd like to be super transparent about the future of Ricochet 2. The problem is, we think that the twists and turns that we're going through will probably drive people more crazy than just being silent about it until we can be very crisp about what's happening next." End quote. It's obvious that this intentionally ridiculous question gave Newell a golden opportunity to obliquely address why there was so little news on Half-Life 3. This is one of the highest-rated, top-grossing, industry-defining franchises in the movie. It's unfortunate that the wait had stretched on for so long with such a downer of a cliffhanger just sitting there collecting dust, but I'm happy to say now, and with a surprising degree of finality, that the cliffhanger is resolved. A new Half-Life game is out, and that Half-Life 3 is no longer so much the world's most famous vaporware as it is a market certainty, while the way we play games transitions from one era into the next. I'd seen headlines to the effect of Half-Life 3 is already out, but I didn't take them to heart because I didn't ever hear many people talking about Half-Life Alyx at all. This is because Half-Life Alyx is probably the most expensive and inaccessible AAA game on the market to play, requiring thousands of dollars in hardware investment to get past the main menu. According to an early 2021 survey, only 2% of Steam accounts use Steam VR, and of that 2%, not all of them will have the desktop power needed to render the game on the extremely high-resolution double screens of a VR headset.
Located somewhere else
this,
on this island.
ultimately, is why
Shut the
Alyx
system
is
down
not
so the
Half-Life
Covenant
3.
won't be able
It's a
to
game
lock us
made
out.
with that exclusivity in mind. Half-Life Alyx is an experiment. It's an attempt to troubleshoot what modes of gameplay can translate from traditional shooters to the
We should
VR
now have
format
access
with
to the main
grace, and
facility.
which ones present
Let's
friction.
find the map room.
It's an attempt to retcon the source generation the way the second game did the first, to re-clarify its intentions and its narrative direction. And it's able to experiment so effectively because the world of Half-Life is so familiar, so essentially comforting to a gamer from older generations, that it eliminates the discomfort of learning the entirely necessary engagement. The sound effects, the props, the cast, we already understand all these things, and they don't have to be taught. Instead, they provide a foundation for new learning, both as player and as developer, as Alyx throws everything at the wall, and Valve makes notes about what sticks. It is not Half-Life 3 because it's so experimental, because there aren't enough people who could even play the game to make it a true super hit like its predecessors. There won't be a Half-Life 3 until most people you know own a VR headset. We're still in the phase of $800 VCRs and $1,000 microwaves, where an object that seems pretty much destined to become commonplace is still struggling to get over the hurdle of how the price of production won't let the price fall to a level where demand might rise. Myself, I had invested in a new gaming desktop, but could not justify adding a VR headset on top of that with how few games I actually wanted to play with VR. My friend Nate bought a headset, but spent his money on that, so he was stuck with a PC that struggled to run Half-Life Alyx. It was only his coming to my house for a week and combining our purchases that we were both able to get a satisfactory experience out of Half-Life Alyx. And that's not counting all the crashes and reboots necessary to keep the equipment in sync. Neither of us knew what Half-Life Alyx was exactly. We knew it wasn't Half-Life 3, which is why we were taken by such surprise by the fact that the game is equally as long, equally as complicated, and equally as varied as Half-Life 2, while also being twice as technically groundbreaking. All of this effort, which certainly deserves in many ways to be called a true numbered sequel, was just a trial run, a test, a prototype. It's this effort that makes Half-Life 3 such a certain eventuality. Valve has created a game that pushes innumerable boundaries just to probe the dimensions of the new design modality, so that when Half-Life 3 is made, all this research into what's good and what's not is already done. This is millions on millions of dollars being spent mostly just in preparation to make greater millions on millions later. It's comforting, in all that business, that the game itself is everything I've loved and everything I've missed about the franchise in the gulf of years since I'd last visited City 17. Looking at this footage will confirm the half-lifeiness of the game, but it doesn't really remotely convey the experience of it. Alyx comes with a spectator mode, which takes what the headset is doing and adds a HUD to it, smoothing out the player's movements and glances, making it engaging to watch as footage or being in the same room as someone is wearing the headset. My friend introduced me to Super Hot and Beat Saber beforehand, which were certainly cool titles, but they fell into my understanding of VR games being short-duration novelty experiences. I honestly did not understand until playing Alyx that it was possible to create a fully equivalent VR experience to a single-player story-driven FPS, traditional one like Half-Life 2. I'd written in my original script 7 years ago that in Half-Life 1 the player wore Gordon like Gordon wears glasses. I had never in my life expected this to become literally true, to wear the game as a hat and hallucinate into it, to be fooled by it, somehow, somewhere, much deeper in my brain. Projected into both of my eyeballs using the brand new third-generation source engine, capable of rendering not only great
Covenant
detail,
are putting up a
but
real
to finally
fight.
let the technical term
Cartographer must be
texture
good.
live up to its name,
My
to
analysis
create surfaces that
indicates
appear
that the map room should
convincingly
be at the
damp
bottom
or
floor of
shiny
this
or
facility.
dusty, to convey
Let's
the
keep
world
going
in a kind
inside.
of visual naturalism that the first game only hinted at. Any single frame of Alex surpasses in quality and detail the pre-rendered adventure games I grew up with, like Riven or Myst, though the footage struggles to convey this too. Tightening the frame to 1920 by 1080p eliminates the feeling of being utterly surrounded by the image, so key to the beauty of the game. Obviously, a lot of this is the technology of VR, and not just Alex, but I want to stress how completely overwhelming of a sensory experience it is compared to a traditional computer game. My office wasn't even large enough to draw out a movable play area in. We used the fixed player position mode, where you have a little sphere of interactive space around you. But if you really invest in a set, with the free space to use it in, it could be even more of an interactive experience than I found it to be. In the 1990s, pop culture jumped the gun on VR. The way it looked in movies was goofy, stupid, and completely speculative. I've been reflexively skeptical of the technology ever since. Not anymore. Alex demonstrated to me that it can be done, to port to the new hardware all the creative expression I've loved about the old. And knowing that it can be done makes it just a matter of time until it will be done, on a wider scale. The fact that 98% of Steam users can't play protects Alex from having too much consumer pressure. It can be a messy and straightforward prototype without the scrutiny of being Half-Life 3. To release Half-Life 3 as a traditional FPS as I've always understood them now seems to me as backwards-looking an idea as releasing Episode 3 a decade and a half after Episode 2. Virtual reality is a technology that can be used to craft living dreams, and I don't mean that just in the superlative sense. It takes my brain up to a minute to feel comfortable transitioning from one version of the room I'm in to the other version when I put the helmet on and take it off again. It fools itself in a way that I just wasn't prepared for. It's not like your own dreams, at least not yet, but the technology is already there to stand on the threshold of another's dream and push against it like a query does. I almost broke Nate's headset playing this game because once I clumsily dropped a grenade and my brain said, run, so I did, face first straight into the actual wall of my actual office, which I had completely forgotten would be there. I thought that there would be a lot more friction with feeling comfortable in VR than I experienced. Running into the wall like that is a mistake of being too comfortable and having so little friction that I forgot the room behind the room. It helps that, like Portal, in order for Alex to shine as a game, it has to first present itself as a teaching tool. Portal 1, and Portal 2 really, because the early sequence is mostly the same, don't start to get truly complicated until the 12th or 14th chamber or so. They start simple, playfully so, to ease you in. So Half-Life Alyx starts with the same kind of gimmicky stuff I had kind of thought VR games were still mired in. There's markers for you to doodle on stuff, sets for you to explore with fun props to pick up and mess around with. The whole first hour of play is basically teaching you how to walk, how to talk, what your physical limitations are. Playing as a voiced character actually makes this more comfortable for me than if I were a voiceless protagonist, if I was playing as myself in the more traditional approach to video games. Here, having Alex be her own person, who I was more or less possessing, helped me to sort out quickly in my mind who was who and layers of context. This is important because I've always been worried about what it would be like to shoot someone in the head and play immersive VR as just myself. With less artistic distance, isn't there less moral distance as well? Does violence mean something different, something more personal, in a more personally expressive environment? I'm certain a game will come along that stresses these moral boundaries or even fractures them, but Half-Life Alyx isn't that. It's the iconography of Half-Life that lets it get away with it so easily. First there's head crabs, then there's zombies, both incredibly creepy to feel as if you're actually in the same room with, yet comfortably fictional enough not to provoke these moral questions. Then the Combine show up, the moment of truth, and I found I had no trouble trying to wreck these fuckers. They're the bad guys. We've met. I know this story. I have already shot these guys before. And now I'm just being all fancy about it. Plus, they've been redesigned to be more physically intimidating, larger, provoking a real deep animal response, flight or fight, which usually turns out to be both as you scramble for cover and peek out to deliver a volley of shots. The animal element of the response was what stuck out to me the most. Where in a computer game, I'm often acting some degree of detachment, I know very well when I'm sitting in my chair. Here, I was reacting to things with much stronger, immediate emotions. Fear, surprise, the thrill of victory, the frustration of defeat. I'm having difficulty in sorting out whether Half-Life Alyx is just especially deft at eliciting these things, or whether the physicality of VR interaction just lets the id have more input than it even had before over the process. I still worry about what this means more broadly, for culture, for the future, And then I remember my friend Nate doing bit comedy while wagging around a burnt corpse, and I cracked myself up too much to keep focused on the morality of cybernetic. While horror is actually the most consistent mood the game touches on, Half-Life Alyx is extremely warm and very funny in a way completely in tune with Episode 2 and Portal 2, a continuation of Valve's Edition's expressive new era. Having Alyx be a voiced character, and having the voice guiding you on radio so much allows for a lot of fleshing out of Half-Life lore and character. A significant portion of Alyx is rifling through doors and supplies, so these ambient conversations make the experience useful to the narrative. There's a Vortigaunt cook and some other Vortigaunt friends who make appearances, and when they do, it's almost Disney-esque the way they're able to emote. It is the closest I've ever felt to having had a meaningful conversation with nothing. The Brayton's perceiving them to be actually being friendly. It's hard to know whether to treat them as actors or puppets, only that it would be naive and unproductive to keep things pure. It also leads to moments of almost inevitable trope. Part of the fun of VR is pushing those boundaries, and since your only actionable anchor in the world is your hands, it's hard to resist picking up and messing with everything. Russell, I know you're a good guy with a serious mission to give me, but please understand that I am poking you with this book for scientific purposes. And lo! You respond! Amazing data here, Russell, you know I appreciate it. Even the more tense and serious moments, my friend and I find it hard not to slip into slapstick from time to time. Sometimes corpses have stuff in their pockets if you roll them over. It's only an extra couple of steps to start doing it from controllers today, maybe throwing a show tune or two as you shake them around. The only caveat is that you can't harm enemies with physical objects. I had heard they omitted the crowbar because playtesters kept confusing the protagonist with Gordon, but I didn't think there would be no such thing as a melee attack. I had read that it was hard to create melee mechanics that didn't lead to the crowbar or what have you getting stuck on objects and geometry as you're going along, which would be trickier than you might expect to deal with because all VR objects are weightless and imaginary. There's no way to create physical, oh, this is stuck on that feedback without just looking at it and wiggling things around. It's also a defense design against player digressions. Early on, I tried to use a big industrial pot ladle as a shield and a brick to try and fight the headcrabs medieval style, and if they had let me do that, I'd never get off my bullshit about it. Comedy deaths would be all I would care about from that point out. Keeping it strictly within the arsenal for combat also keeps the focus on why you're here. Once you start letting the player do whatever they please, you might not ever talk them back into doing what they're supposed to do. Figuring out exactly what it is you're supposed to do is harder in VR than it is from a traditional mouse and keyboard perspective. It feels like there are more possibilities, and it's harder to know where to start. This seems just as true from the development side of things as from a player's perspective. A sign of this struggle is the way that Alyx has incorporated a looting mode, something the franchise has never bothered with before because of the simplicity of the FPS format. Alyx takes just as long as Half-Life 2, but the amount of distance you cover is much more dense and winding. Some chapters are absolutely enormous, over 2 hours in some cases, and in these chapters, you won't advance more than 2 or 3 city blocks. You can even see where you'll end up in the opening minute of the game, the big floating prison out yonder. That's it. That's the game, right there. Mark that building and make your way towards it. This doesn't sound impressive, but when you factor in the Half-Life formula of not using any cutscenes or any other contrivance to let you skip time or distance, you can appreciate what a massive space this is to ask the player to move through as if they were there. There has never been so slow-paced a Half-Life game as Alyx. There has never been a Half-Life game that didn't let you use the keyboard to move either, and that is the key difference. Fast movement and fast combat has a lot to do with all the things you can ignore. You ignore your physicality. You ignore potential actions you know aren't supported by the controls. You ignore the artificiality of what you're doing to focus in on what can be done, to be fully in the present within the game. VR is utterly distracting in comparison, and Alyx's design leaned into that impulse of distraction instead of leaning away, insisting that you keep going forward as fast as you might have in previous traditional games. It skips that. So, all your weapons are upgradable, but it takes heaps of points per upgrade, similar to the number of scrap and weapon upgrades in The Last of Us franchise, like between 15 to 50, with 3 or 4 options per weapon. The points themselves are small hockey puck-looking things called resin, which are little enough to be hidden inside drawers and buckets and such, but large enough to be perceptible on a shelf from a medium distance. The system basically monetizes into the player economy the player's impulse to rifle through all the drawers in a kitchen, to investigate everything around them, and satisfy a player's impulse to do what there is to be done in the space surrounding them. The thing is, gamifying that impulse and hinging rewards on it makes it mandatory in situations that I might have preferred to just move on from. Not every abandoned apartment and supply closet is interesting to me. In traditional games, it takes seconds to loot them, but in VR, it takes a much longer while, as much time as actually rifling through a desk or overturning a trash can. Since upgrade points only matter in high aggregate, it makes a huge mechanical difference whether you're taking the extra time to acquire these points or if you're being more casual. The resin loop is a fascinating example of the challenges presented by adapting known FPS features to virtual reality. Do you try to design a game in anticipation of player comfort, or do you try to ask the players to learn something foreign to them? Will a standard FPS feature remain standard when you account for the physicality of the new hardware, the challenges to players engaging with combat mouse and keyboard? Not being Half-Life 3 frees Alex to be graded and give messy and incomplete answers to questions that don't have any established wisdom yet to guide them. I think part of the fun of Half-Life Alyx is a sense of creator and player learning these things together. Seeing Half-Life Alyx work through its various approaches to horror is where the experimental feeling comes through the most. It's almost clinical how the different chapters are divided into modes of engagement. The first one, pistols versus heroes and zombies, feels the most classic. The way they move and the sound effects they make are so familiar on a kind of deep lizard brain level after basically growing up with monsters that I know instantly what to do in response. They're easier to manage in VR than with traditional controls. You can dodge a head crab more easily than ever before. You can outmaneuver a zombie by actually being more nimble, or just quick projecting yourself away and giving yourself time to line up some shots. I found aiming to be very, very difficult at first, but a lot of that is that I'm nearsighted, but too much nearsighted to use the headset without glasses. My glasses got all smushed up under the headset, and my vision was kind of off a lot of the time. If I ever wanted to seriously get into VR, prescription lenses for the headset are available, but that just drives up the cost of participation even more. Still, I figured it all out eventually, and there are scopes that you can add later on to some of your guns that make determining the hitbox much easier.
Presence here is strong.
Early on, ammunition is rare,
which
adds tension,
secured.
but having to adapt to the system at the same time as balancing survival horror scarcity meant that I was reloading saves more than I was learning as I went. The early zones are creepy, but they seem to understand that the true purpose is establishing nostalgic comfort as a kind of baseline to teach itself to. All of this was done in 1998. The head crabs, the zombies, the flickering lights, and the loud snapping pistol. It was horror then. Now it's more adventure. It's lost its discordant, unsettling quality to instead become the known factor that I am deliberately seeking out. So once Phase 1 of horror has taught you all it has to teach you, you need to seek out new plays to introduce that sense of fear of the unknown, the anxiety of lurking danger, to return to horror as a mood, and not just as a mode. It does this in a lengthy chapter where you're trapped in an infected hotel. Crescendos in this sequence, where you make your way all the way to the top of the building, only to find yourself blocked by a combine force field. You have to cut the power to disable it. So you go all the way down to the basement. You've now been taught this route twice. Once the lights are off, it spawns well over 24 ultra-toxic black widow crabs along that route. If you've left barnacles alive, this helps you now as they eat towards you. Meanwhile, you've just been given a new, fully automatic weapon. So, do what you just did twice, but under extreme duress, with the lights out. It's goddamn terrifying. It's the single most handshakingly anxious I've ever been made by a game, any game. I could never have gotten through it had it not been for the hours already spent becoming comfortable with moving through the environment and shooting things. The difficulty sometimes feels unforgiving, except for a story mode, which is nice when you've been binging it and get mentally exhausted. This lack of forgiveness functions like a proctor, however, grading your progress so that you can only begin to the next lesson having learned the lessons first, like Portal. The third mode of horror has proven the most controversial, a chapter called Jeff, where the title character is an ultra-powerful, fast-moving zombie who hears by sound and vomits acid on you if you get remotely close. The mechanics that you need to navigate the segment aren't familiar to the Half-Life franchise at all. They're run-and-hide mechanics that games like Outlast have turned to as a primary loop. Here, more broadly, it's just kind of a novelty aside, another experiment into what does and doesn't work, but for the duration of this chapter, it's the only loop you've got. It's a vodka distillery, so there's bottles everywhere that are both distractions to throw and traps to mess you up. I kind of hated the Jeff segment because the Outlast dynamic is a pass-fail mechanic, and not open-ended like Half-Life usually is. With the headcrab sequence, there was room for error. In fact, error was encouraged because what they really wanted to throw at you was terrifying chaos. The more chaotically you respond, the more in sync you are with the moment. Jeff requires specific puzzle solutions and particular orders of operations, which you either complete correctly or you get vomited on and have to reload the checkpoint. Is Jeff scary? Yes. Is the distillery chapter effective? Maybe, if you do it well enough the first time. Like Outlast, once you reload enough times and focus in on the order of actions to be performed, there's little emotion left to be had. Horror has been replaced with repetition. Nearly every other boss-type creature in Half-Life, from the blast pit creature to the big old blue cyclops to the striders and the dungeons, have been dangerous, but not easy. In contrast, fighting in Outlast never works and is never an option. Death is an aggressively binary possibility. The result just doesn't feel like Half-Life when it expresses it through Jeff. Like other chapters, Jeff asks, what's fun in VR? Unlike other chapters, my response is an emphatic, not this. In a progression similar to Half-Life 2, Alex transitions its story themes into a generalized feeling of extreme pressure from the opposition, to let being outnumbered and outgunned in the daylight replace creeping around corners in the dark underground. Getting close to the prison mimics the feeling of getting close to the Citadel. The fighting becomes more pitched, the resistance more militarized and fierce. Getting past the Jeff chapter is a big hassle, but once you do, the pacing suddenly picks up noticeably and making demonstrable physical progress with each combat encounter. Block stacks on top of block, more perceptibly than in Half-Life 2 because of how slowly you're picking through them, how this reinforces the memory and significance of the places that you've been. I've gone basically this entire segment of the video without talking about how the plot develops, but that's largely because it doesn't until the last couple hours of play. Alex's script is so much more about the little details, about getting to know Alex and getting to know City 17 better than we ever have before, that it's content to just keep everything big in its back pocket for the reveal. If you don't want to hear any of that, that would be the place to stop. But for me, I didn't have a whole lot of curiosity about Half-Life Alyx until I heard the ending and held repositioned the timeline. That's when I got an inkling about Alex's purpose as a transitional prototype, that its purpose is in laying intricate and expensive groundwork for Half-Life 3 About 2/3 of the way through, you overhear Judith Mossman, not shown, but obviously her, arguing with an advisor. They seem to be talking about probabilities, the probability of your succeeding in freeing the Black Mesa survivor. Gordon Freeman, right? Of course. Except, that's an awful lot of prison for a man with a crowbar. Take the crowbar away and all he's got is a college degree. The sense that it must be Freeman in the prison gives a kind of adventurous momentum to the journey, one protagonist looking out for another across time and across places. The twist is much better. And like with Cave Johnson, the environment tells you the twist long before the villain is named. Inside the vault, combat doesn't begin for a good long while. The prison seems to have been built around an entire chunk of the City 17 apartment block, snatched out from the landscape below and preserved in a vault. It's eerily reminiscent of the apartment block in Half-Life 2, where the Combine first forces you out onto the rooftops when they raid the building. Except for increasingly weird impossibilities. As you go on, reality breaks down, building fragments into impossible and mirrored versions of itself. There is energy, but all of it feels stagnant, potential, a bubbling volcano not yet erupted. I'd seen impossible architecture like this in games before, notably Control, but in VR, it sure is something different, because after a while, the brain regards the visual input as trustworthy. You act within it, it responds accordingly. This is functional sensory data, so the brain signs off on it all. Being confronted with all of this stuff in full VR after having already gotten used to a kind of normalcy within that VR is unforgettable. Later VR titles, I'm sure, will surpass it, and surpass it soon enough if I was willing to bet. But like how I remember what a huge leap forward Half-Life 2 was, even though it's so spare by modern standards, I will never forget the power of this first encounter with the future for me. Half-Life 1 was the first game that I ever played with mouse look. The hazard course there had to explain to me how to navigate that way. Each primary Half-Life game has had an impact on me as a threshold. as a game that augurs what's to come before it arrives, that lingers with me as that future transitions into the past, each game largely representing to me a generational leap. Alex is no different. It's not nearly as skillful or smooth as Half-Life 1 or Half-Life 2, but it is as impressive, and it's trying even more novel things than those older games. It embraces its experimental nature. It understands its own messiness, an experiment to be shared between developer and player. It is not Half-Life 3, yet it includes the explicit promise of it. After the impossible architecture portion, you get to the prison core, where your gloves are transformed into lightning weapons, and the climax mimics the supercharged gravity gun portions of the Citadel. It's alright, but I never quite get the gesture correct. I just kind of madly gesticulated at enemies, and often they died. Just obstacles in the way, really. The final chamber, the one actual object of the game, to reach this exact place, free what's within. You know him. He was on the other very black base in the back. The government name, the old enemy. So he offers Alex the kind of reward that only a godlike figure can offer, altering the future and the present at the same time, as to him, the two are really interchangeable. Alex doesn't yet know to ask for what she wants the most, but he does. Alex will want to save Dr. Eli Vance at the end of episode 2. So the G-Man shows her, then gives her the power to make that change. Just one little thing, a tiny one. She works for him, like the deal he gave Gordon. The deal that Eli and Gordon tried so hard to protect her from. The G-Man schemes across time and across space, canonically. Only he has the power to undo the franchise's biggest cliffhanger with narrative authority. The power to retcon from within, instead of artificially from without. That's what Half-Life Alyx's hidden agenda always was. Then it's roll to credits when that's okay. And then credits up on Gordon, you as Gordon, back in that hangar from episode 2, instantly returning us from the prequel timeline to the revived Green. Eli Vance understands immediately how he's been played, how the G-Man uses his death to manipulate his daughter. There's only one thing for it. Continue to work. Find the Borealis. Save Alex. Dr. Vance hands you your crowbar, and I could not believe how emotional a moment it was. It's surface-level story, certainly, but symbols are powerful, and this imaginary crowbar is nothing if not pure symbology. I never wanted Eli to die. The story might be stronger if he didn't. So, now, he doesn't. The story is now positioned exactly how I wanted Episode 3 to be positioned when the satellite was launched from White Forest. Before the shocking death, I only expected to wait a couple years to resolve, when I was much younger myself. Who knows how long Half-Life 3 will take? Likely not even Valve. This last moment, however, I take as a promise. Maybe it'll be another 12 years, but I'll see Gordon again. I'll be Gordon again. And when I do, it'll be with my whole hands and my whole field of vision. It is not simply that I'm being offered, it's that I'm now capable of grasping it. This is the cliffhanger. A cliffhanger demands you come back to it. It's an inherently withholding creative flourish. Alex ends instead, and retcons episode 2 to end, with an invitation. An invitation to meet again when the future is closer. I could wait. The future always gets here eventually. And often, it is a half-life that lets me know when that future has arrived. Thanks for watching.
This video and all the videos I do are only made possible through the crowdfunding website. I'd like to take a moment and find names of the people who are currently donating to the people like Alex Hansen, Connor McLeod, Eli Bergmans, John Paul Queller, James Sullivan, Aaron Williams, Zach Millington, Zoe Sheep, Eddie Burton, Carol Henderson, Kelly Buffalo, Jason McNamara, Helen Brennan, Marcello Ferrara, DK, Carol Hogue, Daniel Phillips, Salem, Tyler Robinson, Corey Beaufil, Jack Dawson, Dennis McCullough, Stephen Garrett Day, Jake Mays. You are my favorite YouTuber.
Storage. I was on my way from the reactor to O2 to the oxygen. Oh.
Oh, it's
Love
not
it.
auto-focusing.
Oh my goodness.
That's a blurry David Duchovny
Detail.
there.
Right.
You should put the one of him from The Simpsons on the back of it.
Oh yeah. For later. Why don't we go around and say who we say what we're all dressed as?
Okay.
That's a fun Halloween thing, isn't it? How's your Halloween?
So we've got Ellen underneath. So Ellen.
Oh, hello. Well, I am Sally from The Nightmare Before Christmas.
Very nice. And then we got Lolies.
I'm myself.
And then Johnny.
I put a hat on. I forgot to get a costume together, but then I cracked out of here and I realised I seemed like an incidental character from Life is Strange.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very nice. Then Wafer.
I mean, at first glance, I look like a person who just threw something like this stuff together. But actually, I've decided I'm a disciple of Lolth, so...
Very nice. Ian, I think you're Hammerhead.
Correct. Can you not tell? I'm myself in the game with my toilet roll and Simon Cowell jorts pants.
Lovely
Those
jorts.
don't look filthy enough.
Oh my god.
I can't see anyone free to kill someone in front of me.
Right, that's you and Mike then.
Very nice. I'm 1970s Steve Martin, as you can tell by me awkwardly holding this banjo. Then we got Mike.
Space Mike is always more
Mike.
terrifying than the cold, unfeeling void of space.
How much banjo will you be playing for us, Sandy?
Banjo.
How much banjo?
Well, it depends. If I would win a particularly good round, I might give you some rolls.
And if you die, will you be playing banjo throughout?
I'll be sad. Yeah, I'll be sadly playing banjo.
Oh.
And Jane, you seem to be some sort of vampire.
I've seen Bobby Jones Shadow.
Yes.
I love that.
Very nice.
Crack on.
Yeah, before we get kicked out of the game. Right.
Yeah.
So we're going to play
Oh,
for
yeah.
a little bit, and then I think maybe about halfway through this stream we're going to switch to hide and seek mode, which sounds amazing.
Someone will need to explain to me.
Yes.
Yes, it's very simple.
Worry not. It is.
We'll sort that out when we'll cross that bridge when we murder it. All right, everyone ready to mute? Oh, here we go.
Muting.
Okay, folks. So if you can hear me, that's because you
I
are
thought the
watching
Covenant had
outside
eliminated
extra,
all the Marine
where
forces
I,
in this area.
I'm in charge of things. Right, gosh. Oh wow, but there's Halloween decorations up. No one else can hear me. Everyone can hear me unmute when it's time to discuss. Get in there, you leaf. Until then, I'm watching this stream of their space There's a few people around here, I reckon. Now I'm dead and a ghost. And because I was doing some stream operating stuff, I couldn't actually see who got me.
The only FBI agent we had.
He was the only one that could solve this.
Eva, where did you find Luke?
I find him in storage. I was on my way from the reactor to O2 to fix the oxygen, and I stumbled across this.
That's a weird way to go.
What do you mean? The reactor's on the left-hand side, and the oxygen's on the right now.
Yeah, but the quickest way to go is up towards
No, because the reactor. No, I just went the way that made sense to me. I didn't have a map, but I knew they. Well, I did because I
like Ellen, Andy, myself, we're all like fixing in the area at least.
I was in the other one fixing with Space Mike.
Master Chief, the Covenant have taken a position in those rocks above us.
But I told you that it didn't get
Marines, hold your position. We'll handle those guns.
Below the station.
Yes.
The body was reported to the front.
He would. I watched him do it.
Who's everyone voting for?
Vote to space.
Jane? Why Jane?
Yeah, because he was an electrical. That's all I thought.
I don't think that's automatically a crime.
No, but I just decided to.
Louise, you're very much on the attack here, Louise.
Yeah.
I've known many fine electricians.
I'm not willing to space Jen just for the crime of knowing where the wires are.
No, I'm not saying everyone should go for it. I'm just saying that's what I did. You asked me, and I'm telling you.
You're very much on the defensive. I don't like it.
I wasn't even going to tell you guys until you asked.
No, but you were defensive with me as well.
Suspicious. I wasn't saying I'm just going to quietly vote for things to die.
No, because my vote alone is not going to do anything.
I mean, nearly did.
Nearly.
Suspect.
Alright, everyone keep an eye on everyone.
Get through my jobs. Just living that lonely ghost life. Unbelievable. Right, well, let's do all my jobs, and then hopefully I can watch me easily win this game. Can you believe this? Look. Bombs are sabotaged. Bloody typical. Alright, well, who's going to tidy that up? Muggins here, probably. Good. Oh, 2 jobs in electrical. Lucky me. Lucky me. So I've been thinking, folks, this is a good time to share this with you. What if I did? I think everyone would be so confused that somehow I would win. Or do you think they would just eject me and I would lose? It's an unconventional play that I've been toying with. I'm trying to run the mental simulation on how that would potentially go. If I said, hey everyone, I'm the imposter and Mike is. But if, like, for example, if it was me and Ellen, and I said, hey everyone, so confused.
Whoa, who did?
Oh no, it's a bloodbath. I just saw Aoife and Ian together alone.
Saw Ian and Aoife together alone.
Yeah.
What?
Alone together. Yes.
So what though?
Just saying, those are the. I saw them together before Aoife died. So.
Near Aoife's dead body?
She put the one of him from The Simpsons.
That's a weird way to go.
The reactor's on the right-hand side, and the oxygen's on the right now.
Yeah, but the quickest way to go is up towards through the cafeteria.
No, because the
Memorizer.
No, I just went the way that made sense to me. I did the tab on the map, and I knew vaguely where to I'm just as well I did, because I discovered
fixing in an admin.
And I saw Lino just before.
I did say.
electrical is quite close to
Wait.
that.
Actually, is that
Yes.
Oh.
I don't think Ian's the imposter.
Vote to space.
Jane.
Jane? Why Jane?
Yeah, because she was an electrical. That's all I've got.
I don't think that's automatically a crime.
No, it's not, but I just decided to.
Louise, you're very much on the attack here, Louise.
Yeah.
I've known many fine electricians.
I'm not willing to space Jen just for the crime of knowing where the wires are.
for it. I'm just saying that's what I did. You're asking and I'm telling you.
You're very much on the defensive. I don't like it.
Yeah, that's why
I wasn't even going to tell you guys until you asked. I was
No,
just
but
gonna
you were
call
defensive
you
with
both
me
for
as
down.
well.
Suspicious.
Right, fix wiring, divert power, comms sabotaged already. Oh, nuts. I'm going the wrong way. We had like an hour and I had to eat my dinner really fast. So now I'm in here doing like post-dinner uncomfortable naps. No one would want to be but I'm not the murderer. I think it might be Loli's, but she's twice now, so maybe. Reduce the amount of water. Oh no! What's that? Wait, is it a hole? Well, it definitely wasn't Aoife.
I just saw Aoife and Ian together alone.
No, you didn't!
You saw Ian and Aoife together alone.
That right, it's definitely
Alone
Loli's.
together.
I was that was 100% no way.
Sorry, those are the I saw them together before.
Near Aoife's dead body, or?
No, just
together.
That's the last time I saw Aoife was with Ian alone.
Ah, okay.
Nonsense. I was nowhere near.
Where did you find the body?
Ian.
Hello? Hello? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
It's blatantly Loli's. Throwing me under the bus like that. I was nowhere near Eve.
Where did you find the body?
Left, bottom left thruster thingy. And I was nowhere near Eve. I found her body.
I saw you alone. I was just leaving electrical and both of you were.
Ellen, what have you been doing?
I went to weapons, cafeteria, but also I did just admire all the little bats on the window at the back of the cafeteria. It's so cute!
What tasks did you do in cafeteria?
Bat analysis.
I did some on one side, I did the leaves. Here's the thing also, by the way. Andy was running away from the oxygen alarm. Another!
Sorry, I didn't realise. Oh, I don't have my sound on. As it gets on the mic.
To be honest with you, I'm suspicious of London. It's Ian. Also, it's Andy.
I'm just telling you what the information I have.
Loli's is acting sus, but I think Ellen couldn't name the task she was doing, which I think is pretty sus.
Ellen was thinking about bats. my god, look at that! I really like this costume. Many minus points about this costume. One of them the other thing though is that no one can see my incredibly suspicious face. This face gives me away every time. People just look at me and they go, what? I found it dead.
Well, at least you're really a victim of your own success now, aren't you? Like, everyone wants to kill Lolies off
I think
first.
Lolies is us.
So,
Who's died?
Yeah.
so it's Lolies.
Oh yeah, Lolies.
So I'm down the corridor. Away from Lolies body.
Where
Down
were you
that
at that point?
It's the corridor below that open. So it's like O2, you go down, and it's comms, above comms.
I was doing a OT tasks with Ian, so I checked out what was doing tasks when I came in.
I was trying to find shields. For some reason, I thought the shields task was in weapons and then navigation. And then I looked at the map. Jane was in shields.
I did see how that is navigation.
I paused and I was like, and that was me checking the map. Like,
I know the shield. I was quite sure because I had access to the shield doing that map as well.
What's he doing word space, Mike?
Well, I did the electrical, you know, the one with the little crystal light thing. It goes through. And then I was heading up to navigation. I think one of them.
How does it go?
It goes and then the
Okay, I believe you.
Is that one in electrical? Genuine question.
Yeah. There's like
Yeah.
That's on the Yeah, I'm not so sure
Resistance
about
appears to be
Oops.
increasing. We must be close to the control center.
Can you take a vote back? Bye, Andy.
Subtle. The entrance to the control center is at the top of that pyramid structure. Bring me up there and I should be able to get us inside.
I think it's Space Mike. I think he's lying about the card. And I think he's going to vote for me because he knows there's another vote for me.
Oh.
The entrance to the control center is at the top of that pyramid structure. Bring me up there and I should be able to get us inside.
I've got 2 tasks in electrical, I will confirm.
Oh no, Space Mike! He's been returned to his natural habitat. He'll thrive.
Scanning. Covenant forces in the vicinity have been eliminated. Let's move on to Halo's control center. This is it, Halo's control center.
Oh god. Let's hope that everyone else does this because I'm busy downloading some stuff. I wonder how many bodies I've walked past because literally the only reason I've been spotting bodies is by the report button, like showing up on the screen. Okay, good. Ooh, Johnny's up. Fuck, Johnny's gonna kill me.
I found
that terminal.
I
Try
found a
there.
dead ether.
I just saw her come out of electrical and go the other way as the reactor was going off.
You all right?
I can
Never
confirm
been
I did 2
better.
tasks in
You can't
electrical,
imagine the
neither
wealth
of
of
them was the
information.
one crystal.
I did.
Knowledge, so
switch.
much,
I
so
did
fast.
task in shields,
It's
and it
glorious.
was the one crystal where you switched
So,
away in shields, which
what
means
sort of
that
weapon
Space
is it?
Mike was lying.
What are you talking about?
Let's stay
wait, hang on,
focused.
wait, sorry.
Halo.
Okay,
How
good,
do
well,
we
good.
use it against the
I-
Covenant?
Right?
This
Good.
ring
I
isn't
felt
a
very
cudgel,
pursued
barbarian.
right
It's
then
something
by
else.
Johnny Keogh
Something
Dudley.
much
I was
more
running
important.
to the
The
table
Covenant were right.
to press the button
This
because I
ring.
thought Johnny was on his way to murder me.
Forerunner.
Oh wow! No, I
Give me a
was.
second
Well, I was
to
going
ask.
to the reactor, and then I was leaving the reactor.
Yes, the Forerunner built
You
this
look,
place.
get there.
you
what
were
they
going the
call
opposite,
a
and then you saw
fortress
me and you
world.
doubled
In
back
order to-
after me. And then I stopped and I waited
Oh.
to see if you were
No, that
following me
can't
still. And you were coming at me. I
Oh,
was like, oh God, run!
fools! They must have
To the
known. There must
table.
have been signs.
And then
Slow
someone
down.
else found the
You're
body.
losing me.
The Covenant
I was just
found
about,
something
basically, I was just about
buried
to
in
pass
this
you on.
ring. Something horrible. Now,
Just
For
because
me,
I was scared.
suspiciously.
Yes.
Something
Ian, were you
buried.
suspicious enough that
The
you were on
captain,
your way
we've
to
got
the
to stop the
cafeteria?
captain.
Describe your level of
Keys?
sus.
What
the
are we-
I was
weapons
running
cache
for
he's
my
looking
life to
for.
the
It's not really.
cafeteria, but-
We can't let him get inside.
I don't.
I watched.
There's
by
no
Johnny.
time.
Okay,
Get
you're
out of
very
here. Find
suspicious,
keys.
double back
Stop
easy.
him before it's too late.
So I was downloading data at the top side of the comms bit,